My name is Felicia Tucker. I am from Greenville, South Carolina. I'll be telling my story about being held captive by my mom and stepdad's dealer. My mom and dad are both from South Carolina, Greenville. They met each other. She was so in love that she dropped out of high school. She was in the 12th grade. And then when they got married, they had me. My dad was in the military and he had been to Vietnam. After she had me, they were living on Fort Benning Army Base. And that's where I was born in Columbia. After that, he was stationed in Germany, and that's where we went. When they came back, he was not the same because he was drinking and all that kind of stuff. My mom's family was just known as drinking, fighting, all those different things. My mom and dad divorced, I was 7 because they had been separated for a while. When we went to family court, they left us in the car, me and my sisters. I didn't know that it was family court. I didn't know anything. I just knew we were sitting in the car for a long time. My mom and my stepdad got back to the car. I just remember them talking about it and him saying, you don't have to worry about that anymore. And she said, that's right. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I got custody of the kids. I love my grandmother, my mom's mom. She just, as a child, I thought it was cool to go over her house because we got to do whatever we wanted to do. But as an adult, I knew that wasn't right. My mom, she would drop us off whenever she wanted to go play bingo. My family loved to gamble and they were always chasing money, but it always seems like we didn't have enough. I would definitely say we grew up poor. He always had all these people come into the house. And when she was working, he would have them at the house. Or when she got off work, a lot of times he would pile us into whatever raggedy car we had so that they could go buy their. My grandmother's house, she was one of those people that she would feed anybody. Any and everybody could stay. You could go to sleep in her house and wake up and you don't know who's laying beside you. But there were several people that were grown men that would pull out their privates and try to get me, try to touch their private parts. A few of them touched me in my private area, but no one just outright raped me at that time. But there was a lot of touching. One of my other sister's uncle, he attempted to molest me and attempted to rape me, but I was too vocal for him and he left me alone. But I just remember there was a lot of touching. Other than that, that was the extent of the molestation. This dealer, actually, he was one of the people that, remember I told you that my stepfather would bring all these shady people to the house while my mom was at work. He called me out of my room. I just remember standing there looking at this guy and he looked at me. He said, man, she has some beautiful eyes. She has some pretty eyes. And that was around 7 or 8, the first time I seen him. And I think he was selling for him then. I don't know. I can't verify. I was too young. But fast forward to around 13 is when they ran into this man again when he was out looking for some. And they ran into him and he pulled up in his car and he said, what are you looking for? And he told him, he said, okay, I can make it happen. My stepfather started selling for him and he started selling. That was the first time that I would see my mom. I won't say she was actively selling, but she was just in agreement with it. The apartment that we were living at this time, he just kind of took a liking to me. Sometimes people, they were selling too, sometimes offer items. I remember tulip rings and necklaces, and he would kind of look at it. He asked me if I liked it. My eyes were big because I'm like, yes, I like it. I never get anything. So he would give those items to me. I was loving it because wearing jewelry and, stuff that I didn't have before. And he started buying me clothes and just dropping stuff off every now and then when he would come to pick up his money and drop off new for them to sell. One of those times we all go to the movies together and I rode in the truck with him and they rode in their separate car. We went to see a movie. I kind of felt uncomfortable, but nothing had happened at that point. When we pulled up to the apartment, he kissed me. I felt like, ew, he's old and he was not attractive. I was looking at the money and the things and the items. I didn't have a father figure. I was missing my father. All that I think came into play on this. I left the truck that night and my parents treated everything like it was normal. A couple of times he asked if I could go with him and they agreed. He took me to the mall and he said, I'm going to buy something special for you. He said, will you wear it? And I'm like, okay. So when we get to his apartment, which my parents didn't know where he stayed, he gives me a bag and it's this pink lace teddy. I'm looking at it and I'm like, what is this? And he said, I want you to put that on. I'm like, I don't want to wear that. So finally I just threw the door open and I walked out. He kind of grabbed me because he was much bigger than I was and put me on the bed. He grinded on me. I just laid there, didn't know what to do because all I could think about was the stuff I was getting. One of those times he came and picked me up again. I forgot where we went. He brought me back to the house. It was dark. The doors was locked. No one was there. And I'm like, where are they? I guess he knew being in the game. He said, I wonder if they got arrested. So he called the detention center. Both of them had gotten arrested. My stepdad called him on the phone and said, yeah, we got busted. He talked to my mom too, some kind of way. And she said, take Felicia over to my mom's house. And he said, no, she can stay with me. It's okay. And she said it again. No, just take her over there. She's fine here. I'll take her to school and everything. Which he did. He bailed them out. He helped them move, fronted the money for them to get another place, a trailer. And then he said, just let Felicia stay with me. It's fine. I can still take her to school. And they agreed to it. One of those times that I was at his apartment, he said, well, I've been buying you all this stuff. It's time for you to pay up. That's when he raped me. Blocked it out. I was just thinking about the stuff. If he goes away, I won't get the stuff anymore. I let it continue. No one ever said anything. He would bring me around my family whenever he went to go collect his money. And I remember one time they messed his money up and they got into it and they got to yelling real. My stepdad told him, well, Felicia stays here. She's not going with you. And my eyes got big because I'm like, but I won't get any more stuff. The dealer runs to his truck as though he's about to leave. And I run over to the truck and said, you can't leave. They started talking with each other and he said, get my money right. I went with him. It was about a 3-month time frame. I remember that this was the month of April in 1990. He had dropped me off at school. And at this point, it had got to where he was just pretty much raping me. And I just blocked it out. One of those times at a middle school, and my mom came to pick me up in one of the cars that he had got them. And it was an old raggedy car. And she picked me up and I wasn't used to it. And I'm like, why are you picking me up? She's talking the whole time. It's not right for you to be staying at a grown man's house. It's time for you to come home. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, y'all must have messed his money up again. And I'm thinking, and as she's talking about how this isn't right, now you think it's wrong? Now you have morals? Now all of a sudden it's wrong. And we drive to the house and I remember talking to my sisters and everything, and I had money in my purse. I remember giving them a whole bunch of money because in my mind I was leaving that night. So I called him on the phone because my step parents had left to go somewhere. Called him and said, what's going on? And he said, messed my money up again. And I said, well, I'm running away. And he said, running away? You serious? And I said, yes, I'm running away. Are you gonna come pick me up? And he said he would, but I don't think he really thought that I was gonna run away. During the day while I was there, I made sure to fix the door because they had a screen door to where it wouldn't make noise, all that. And I just had this little plan in my little mind. When everyone was asleep, put some pillows in my spot and I ran up the road. There was a McDonald's up the road and I was just standing there. It's about 2:00 in the morning. I was scared and I called him on the payphone and told him I ran away. He said, what? Really? I said, yes. He said, okay, I'm on the way. As I was waiting on him, I remember there was another car that pulled up and it had some guys in it and they were kind of like pulling it. And I could tell they did not mean any good. But thankfully, as they pulled up to get out the car, he pulled up in his truck and he had his lights bright and I got in the truck with him. He looked at me, you really ran away? And I said, yes. I said, I want to be with you because this is the nice version of him. He takes me to a hotel room and we moved from hotel to hotel almost every day. They didn't know where he stayed, but when he would go to his apartment, on his answer, they would leave all kinds of messages. You better bring Felicia back and I'm going to call the cops. And then I would hear my mom saying, Felicia, get your ass home. And the reason why I know, he would bring the tapes to the hotel room so I could hear them. And it would just instill a fear in me because on one of them, she said, you better get back here or I'm going to put you in a girl's home. That's one of the threats she used to say a lot with us growing up. He said that he had pimped a lot of girls that had been in girls' home. And he used to tell me some stories about it. So I was petrified. So my fear kept me there. This was in April. And then in the month of May, I used to always say I wanted to go to Disney World. When we were together, and he said he was going to take me. So after moving hotel, he drives us down to Fort Lauderdale because his brother lived there. And we saw his brother and his family. And I think he told them that I had ran away with him. He took me to Disney World and I got to see it and everything. When we came back, he had some land in South Carolina that he was planning on building on. Did cash payment and bought a trailer home. And that's where he was going to move us into because nobody knew where it was. But that first week was my birthday week. I was about to turn 15. That night, he just flipped out. And I don't know why. He smoked, he drank, and he would snort every now and then. He flipped out and he beat me really bad. And I just remember laying there, balled up on the sofa, and my lip was swollen and my eye was closed up. It was my birthday. He said, your birthday presents are on the table. I bought you another purse and some perfume, my outfit. I just remember looking at that stuff. I didn't want it. That was the first time that I did not want the stuff, and internally, I wanted to go home. Even though home was not great, I knew it was better. When he beat me, I just couldn't believe it. I was in shock, and I wanted to go home, but he would tell me so many stories about all the girls he pimped and all these street stories he would tell me to keep me in fear, because at this time, he's scared that I will leave and then tell what he's done and he'll go to jail, because he had done jail time before. He would talk about that every now and then. So I'm down there in the country. It's a new wooded area. There's a few houses here and there, but nobody's really there. He has me where he wants me. I am in this trailer and he beats me a lot just for dumb stuff. He may have been schizophrenic or something, because he would just flip out. And sometimes I would try to fight back, but I was little. One of the first time I tried to leave because I was just tired of it. One of the times he left because he was still selling, and I left out of the house and I was going up the road, and he had turned around and he saw me walking on that dirt road. He drugged me by my hair and pulled me into the truck and drugged me back into the trailer. He beat me with a stick that was, I won't say it was a 2x4, but it was about that, can you see that? About that big around. And I was down, I think 3 days really, because I would go in and out of consciousness. One of the times he beat to where my body was convulsing really bad, and he never called me by my name. He called me ugly. He never called me Felicia. That time he had beat me so bad because he had pushed my head through, made a hole, and I started convulsing. And he was so scared at that time that he grabbed me and put me in the shower to get cold water on me. And he's, Felicia, are you okay? And I wanted to die at this time with all these beatings. I haven't seen anybody. His mom and dad, his sister, his brother's wife, they all knew I was down there. His mom and dad went to high school or went to school with my grandmother. They knew me. They know who I was. And I don't know if they were scared of him, but a few times his mom came down there to bring some cookies and stuff, but they never said anything to anybody. His brother and sister, they were career people, but they would come to him to get their or sniff. They had the cleaned up life, and he was like, I guess the family reject is what he called it. They knew I was down there, and they would talk to me every now and then whenever I would see them, because when I wasn't locked in a room, he got to where he locked me in the bedroom for days. I would just be in that room. If he didn't bring any food, I didn't eat. I was held captive, and he would call me out when he was ready for me to do anything sexual. And then it got to the point where he didn't want me to look at him. So he would make me lay on the floor when I'm lying there naked. He would just tell me put the pillow on my face because I don't want you looking at me. He would just look at me and get himself aroused or whatever until he's ready to force himself on me. That happened all the time. And a few times I remember hearing a camera, like he took a picture of me, but I can't verify that because I had a pillow over my face. At this time, it was 14, 15, and 16. I remember on my 16th birthday, I had been locked in a room for some weeks. He would throw food in there and lock the door or whatever, and he would go out and sell. He threw a pair of blue jean Levi shorts and said, here's your birthday present. And at this point, I was numb, but I was ready to die. The only comfort I would have was there was a window in the bathroom. There were animals that would come into the yard, and the deer would come to the window. I believe that was God even then trying to assure me that everything was okay, but I didn't feel okay. He had left the door unlocked, and I think he did that to see what I would do. He had a bottle, and I took it, almost the entire bottle. I just remember saying, I'm ready to die. And he used to always threaten to pimp me as well. He never did, but he always threatened. I took this bottle of pills. I said, I don't want to be here anymore, but I woke up. I was so angry that I woke up. I would do that again, trying to kill myself, and I kept waking up. He never knew. I used to think about ways how I could get out of this situation. He said it to me. I used to think about killing him, because he had a gun. Sometimes he would scare me and wake me up out my sleep with this gun to my head. I used to think about getting that gun and shooting him in the head and just killing him. But I didn't. I used to think about it often, because he used to threaten to kill me and bury me on that land. And he said, no one will know because they don't know where you are. They're not looking for you anyway. All those things to really make me feel bad. The only thing that I can say that he did, he brought plenty of books for me to read, because he said he didn't want me to be a dumb And no matter what it was, I could read it. He would get mad because he would quiz me on these books. And I could memorize everything down to the page number. He would get mad, angry, like, I don't want you to study that anymore. He really despised white people. He would always tell me that you're part white. You have the devil in you. He would say stuff like this. And he said he was a god because he was black. And the only thing I could think of is my mom and dad are black. He would make me feel like, he said, when you get old enough, you need to have kids by a black man. Just stupid stuff. I was brainwashed. I was believing this stuff. I thought I was part devil. He told me about how he had went into the military for a year and he got out. And I said, well, I want to go in the military. I would tell him that's what I want to do. He would just kind of look at me like, you're not going anywhere. So these years go by. My days consisted of staying in this room. He did have a television in my room. There's no telephone, but I would sit in a room and I would watch TV. My favorite shows was like the TGIF Fridays, because that was my escape. He bought me a Monopoly game and I would sit in there and play Monopoly with my imaginary friends. But 14, 15, 17, 18, and then 19 years old. Because when I turned 18, I kept saying I was going to leave. And he brainwashed me to where I didn't want to leave because I didn't have a GED. I didn't have ID. I didn't have anything. Where was I going to go, right? One of those times he came home and he opened my door and I just showered and washed my hair. And I was standing there and looking at him like, what? And he said, I saw your mom today. And I'm like he's speaking another language. Because this has been years, right? And I'm like, my mom, what are you talking about? And he said, I saw her at the laundromat. And I said, okay. I told her that you've been with me all this time and that I was going to bring you to see her. And I'm still looking at him in disbelief, like, is this a joke? And he said, so clean yourself up and put on something decent. Because mind you, he hadn't bought me anything this whole time. I am still wearing the same clothes I had when I was 14 because number one, I'm pale and malnourished. I'm 19, but I look 14. So cleans me up and he tells me that he's going to take me to go see them because he said she's living in this apartment complex and he's going to take me. I wasn't believing it. So we get in the vehicle and we drive to the apartment complex, and my sister that was 8 years old when I left, she was now 13 and she had developed, her body had changed, and she ran up to me and I remember her hugging me. She said, you still look the same. And I'm looking at her like, you don't? Like, wow, everybody's grew up around me. I go into the apartment and I have another little sister. She's 2. She said, that's our little sister. And I said, okay. And he walked with me to the apartment. He kind of sitting there making sure I don't say the wrong thing, right? So I asked where our mom was and she said, she's at bingo. That's where she goes. And I said, okay, where's our other sister at? The one that was under me. We have the same mom and father. She said she works at McDonald's. So sat there for a little bit and then he takes me to McDonald's. I get to see my sister and she was happy to see me and we hugged or whatever, but she had also grew up and I'm still sitting here looking 14. He takes me to the bingo place and my mom is sitting there dabbing her with the little dabber. She's sitting there with a family friend who's in her 70s or 80s. Her eyes got wide when she looked at me and she looked at my mom like, don't you know who this is? And my mom kind of said, hey. She kept dabbing her bingo marker. She said, are you coming back? And he said, yeah. He said, I'll bring her back tomorrow or Sunday. I remember asking her, I said, do you have my birth certificate and social security number? And she said, yeah, I can give it to you. And I said, okay. We was awkward situation because there was no hugging and I wanted that so bad and it didn't happen. We talked a little bit, then he took me back with him, and as soon as I get in the truck with him, we're heading back down to the trailer. He says, see, she still doesn't want you. They don't want you. He did bring me back to see them. They were all at her apartment when I got there, and a new boyfriend, he's a photographer, and he took pictures of us. One of the pictures where I'm sitting there with them and I still look 14 and everybody else is kind of like grew up around me and I'm the oldest child. Everywhere I went, he would sit there and watch me to make sure I don't say anything, I guess. But the whole time I'm just wanting my mom to say, hey, you can come stay with me. He did get to a point where he was bringing me to see them almost every week. He got to where he would leave me and I would have the time of my life reaching out to the friends that I would have went to high school. I was getting all that back. Then when I would go back down to the country with him, to still beat me, but I was fighting back at this time. I used to fight back. And each time I would fight back harder. And so the attacks were not as frequent because I would pick up something and I would fight back. When I left him, he had got to where he was bringing me to see them and then he stopped. He was afraid that I was talking to somebody else, that he was always accusing me of leaping around with everybody. He was very insecure. He said, you don't need to go to their house anymore. he stopped me from going. At this point, I have my birth certificate and my social security card. And I just remember telling myself, I am leaving tomorrow if I have to bust through the walls. He opened the door to my room and he kind of looked at me and he said, well, I'm getting ready to go and I'll be back shortly. I kind of looked at him like, okay. And as soon as he left, I was hoping that he hadn't locked the door, and he hadn't, and he left. And I had already had my bag packed. I had like a little small bag of just clothes, and I had my birth certificate and my social security card, the most important things to me at that time. I remember walking out the front door, and I remember looking back at trailer, looking at everything, and I said, this has been my home for all these years, but it's not my home. I started walking up the road with my little bag, and I had to stop every so many minutes, and I was on the main back road. Different cars would stop. The first one, truck drivers, the 18-wheelers, they stopping, trying to get me to get in the truck with them, and I just kept on moving. I kept saying to myself, if I can make it up this road, then I am Army material. I'm going into the military. So there was a white couple pulled over, and they looked at me, and they said, what is your name? And I said, none of your business. And they said, how old are you? I said, that's none of your business. Then they said, well, we have a daughter about your age that ran away. And I said, well, is she black? So I kept on walking, and I just kept on walking. And then the last person that stopped, it was on a Nissan Maxima. I remember it was gold. He pulled up. It was a nice looking young man. He said, where are you going? I said, up the street to the store. He said, you need a ride? And do you need to call anybody? He had a cell phone that he pushed through the window. When I reached in to grab it, I just saw an image of a woman's head in a ditch. And I did like that. I said, no, thank you. He looked at me, kind of sucked his teeth and said, are you sure? And I said, I'm sure. So I keep walking, and I get to the Shell gas station, and I had some change in my pocket, and I called my mom's apartment, and I said, I just ran away from him, and I'm going into the military. I said, I'm walking on this highway. I am at the Shell gas station. Would you please come get me? And she said, I was just about to leave, heading that way, go to a memorial service. She said she would pick me up. I said, well, I am going to keep on walking. She pulled up, and I got in, and I said, I'm going into the Army. I've had enough. And she kind of smiled a little bit, dropped me off at her apartment. The next day, one of my friends that I grew up with, she took me to the Army National Guard. They got me. I signed, and they said that I could do the delayed entry program, but I wouldn't go into basic training until February 1998. When I went into the military, again, I didn't know the difference between the National Guard. I told them I wanted to go active. And they said, well, you have to go through with this contract, and in 6 months you can go active. So when I came home from basic training, had to stay with my mom for 6 more months. I worked at the Waffle House. I would give her pretty much all my money because I felt so guilty having to stay with her. I went into the military station in Fort Leonard Wood. It was my first duty station, and that's where I met my first husband. We married, and I had my twin girls in 2000. We went overseas after that. I was over there a couple of years. Our relationship was so unstable because it brought all that, because no one ever knew what I had went through. We would fight and argue quite often, and it just was not good for the girls. Divorced after about 4 or 5 years of marriage. Ended up getting out of the military because they were trying to send he and I to Iraq at the same time. And I just would not do it. Ended up working in Alabama, where he's from, for a little bit before I got my government job here in Missouri, is where I am now. This is where my daughters have been in the same school system from kindergarten until they graduated. I got my master's degree in cybersecurity. I'm an adjunct professor at Webster University. I'm a minister now. I'm an author. And I wrote a book about everything that I went through. I've remarried my best friend, and he was one of the first people I ever told everything that I went through. And he just could not believe it. When I got saved in 2005, I just remember hearing the Holy Spirit saying, you're going to write a book about what you went through. I started writing on it, and then I would put it back because it was too painful when I got to certain things. Then in 2014, the Holy Spirit said, I need you to finish because my daughters were about to turn. That key age in our family was 14. A lot of crucial things happened to, especially the females in our family at 14. I finished it. It has helped so many people. Everyone who reads it, I always get this. You don't look like what you went through. And no, I don't, because God is a redeeming. I was asked a question one time, if that guy was here today and you were told to help him in some way, that he was sick, could you do it? And I said, I wouldn't want to, but when I think about what Jesus did for me, I can do it because I'm doing it to please him. I don't like him. I forgave him. doesn't mean that I want to be around him. His sister, I wrote her a letter because she worked for Department of Social Services. Emailed it to her job, told her that I forgive all of you. I was able to, again, write my own book about it. Blessed footsteps, and you see that cursed, it was cursed footsteps, but God had me block it out in red because that's the blood. I'm no longer, my footsteps are no longer cursed. For some memories, I tear up sometimes when I think about it. I truly didn't think I was going to get out of that situation. I'm so thankful that I was able to run away that day and that he didn't come up the road. Some people ask me, okay, if he was living today, would you try to press charges? I would have some years ago, but at this point, I'm free. Everything that he's done to me and other people, he's getting his right now. I just wanted to mention my second book that I did this year is called God's 24/7 Soldier Handbook. It's not a big book, but this is some of the strategies that I use as a soldier and as I use in my day-to-day life. You don't take full bottles of pills and wake back up. I believe that God saved me. I'm so thankful for that. And when it comes to abuse, I was a guest speaker at 2 Army bases, and I was able to tell my story. I talk to people and tell them that your beginning does not have to define your ending. You have a choice to make. And I'm so glad I made the choice, number 1, to live, 2, tell my story, and 3, to help other people get through some of the things that they've gone through.